Why do some people burn their lives down the moment things get calm? You see it everywhere. Someone finally gets the job they wanted, the partner they hoped for, the quiet they claimed to need, and then they light a match. Not literally, but slowly, they sabotage it. They stir something up. They make things harder than they need to be. We say we want rest, but when it finally arrives, it feels wrong, boring, unsettling. There's a tension inside that starts looking for something to fight against. A task, a distraction, a problem, something to wrestle with. Maybe it's not that we're wired for comfort. Maybe we're wired for friction. Maybe we're not addicted to peace, but to chaos. To most people, chaos feels like something to avoid, a failure of control, a threat to balance. But Friedrich Nietzsche saw it differently. He believed chaos was part of the human engine, not something that breaks us, but something that moves us. He wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Not because chaos is beautiful, but because it's necessary. Not because pain is noble, but because it creates change. This is not a story about falling apart. It's about what grows in the aftermath. When Nietzsche spoke of chaos, he wasn't talking about noise or clutter or simple disorder. He was talking about potential. Chaos for him was the raw material of transformation, not the enemy of meaning, but its beginning. He believed that before anything great can emerge, there has to be a breakdown, a letting go, a fall. And that space, the one that feels empty, unstable, uncertain, that's where the new thing begins. In The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche introduces two opposing forces, Apollo and Dionysus. Apollo is clarity, form, logic, the clean lines of reason and restraint. Dionysus is the opposite. He stands for passion, madness, instinct, the part of life that's wild, unpredictable, and ecstatic. Nietzsche didn't say one was better than the other. He said they were both essential, and that art, real art, only happens when these two collide. From the highest joy sounds the cry of horror, and from that horror, something real can be born. We tend to think of joy and pain as opposites. Nietzsche saw them as partners. You can't have one without the risk of the other. The highest states of life, love, art, truth, require vulnerability. They demand risk. That's why Nietzsche didn't ask people to escape suffering. He asked them to face it, to let it do its work, because only when the surface breaks can the deeper shape emerge. Chaos, in that sense, is not a problem to fix. It's a pressure that forms us. You wake up to an alarm. You check your calendar. The to-do list is already waiting. You've optimized your habits, stacked your goals, color-coded your life. But inside, it's still loud, restless, pulled. We talk about burnout, distraction, and overstimulation. But maybe those aren't the problem. Maybe they're signs of something deeper, that we've structured everything except meaning. Nietzsche warned about this. He spoke of a future figure, the last man, a person who wants nothing more than comfort, predictability, a steady routine with no risks, no heights, no suffering. He doesn't dream. He doesn't struggle. He doesn't aim beyond himself. As Nietzsche put it, the time is coming when man will no longer shoot the arrow of his longing beyond man. The last man doesn't live badly. He just doesn't live fully, And what replaces vitality is numbness, endless scrolling, constant novelty, media content instead of contact. It feels like stimulation, but it's a slow retreat. Nietzsche saw this coming, not as a technological problem, but as a spiritual one. When people stop pursuing anything larger than themselves, they collapse inward. Comfort becomes the ceiling. Stillness becomes unbearable. So we reach for friction, noise, something, anything to stir the surface. But if the quiet makes us anxious, what part of us has gone silent? Because Nietzsche didn't believe we were meant to live in permanent calm. He believed we were built to struggle, to climb, to create tension, and then rise through it. Maybe what we call distraction is just a signal that something vital is missing, and maybe chaos isn't pulling us down, but trying to wake something up. You open your phone, 5 apps running, 3 conversations, a dozen tabs open in your head. You tell yourself it's just modern life, but maybe it's more than that. There's a rhythm to it, a loop, scroll, react, overbook, repeat. Each ping, each notification, each burst of urgency, it tricks the brain. We mistake it for movement, for meaning, but it's just stimulus. Nietzsche believed that life affirms itself through resistance, not ease. So when things get too calm, we reach for friction, not because we're flawed, but because we're wired to test our edges. Chaos, in this sense, isn't dysfunction. It's proof that something inside still wants to move. But sometimes that chaos isn't new. It's old. It's familiar. A child raised in unpredictability learns that peace is dangerous, that calm doesn't last, that silence comes before something breaks. So they grow up with a strange reflex. When things get good, they brace for impact, or worse, they cause it, because at least that's a chaos they can control. Nietzsche never framed this as weakness. He saw it as raw energy, unshaped, unused. We carry tension like it's a flaw, when sometimes it's a resource. It just hasn't found the right form yet. He wrote not to tame the chaos, but to understand its role in becoming. But what happens when that chaos inside us stops being reaction and starts seeking form? What if the tension we carry isn't weakness, but will? Nietzsche believed we don't just suffer, we reach through suffering. Not for comfort, but for something sharper, stronger, more alive. That brings us to one of his most misunderstood ideas, the will to power. Most of us think we're wired to seek comfort, that we want safety, stability, predictability. Nietzsche didn't believe that. To him, the core instinct of life wasn't to survive. It was to grow, to push past the edge of what we've known, even if it hurts. He called this the will to power. Not power over others, but power over one's own potential, to shape, to endure, to move forward, even through resistance. That changes how we look at sabotage. Sometimes people destroy the good things in their life, not because they're afraid of happiness, but because part of them is reaching for something beyond it. A good relationship ends. A stable job is abandoned. A peaceful moment is ruined by a sudden argument. It looks like failure, but Nietzsche might say it's misdirected growth. An instinct turned inward, a will trying to break out, but with no clear aim, so it collapses the structure instead. He wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger, not as motivation, not as a battle cry, but as a recognition that even pain, real, crushing pain, has the potential to sharpen us if we survive it." We We sabotage when the stillness starts to feel like stagnation, when we mistake peace for being stuck, when we don't yet know how to build, so we tear down. The will to power doesn't always look noble. Sometimes it lashes out. Sometimes it burns through what's working because it senses it's time for something new, even if we don't have the shape of it yet. That's not weakness. It's movement, just without direction. Nietzsche didn't promise that this path would be clean or calm, only that it was necessary. To live, in his view, was to struggle, but not aimlessly. The task was to shape the chaos, not escape it, to suffer, not for the sake of pain, but for the sake of becoming. So what if the chaos doesn't go away? What if the same pattern keeps showing up again and again? Nietzsche had a thought experiment for this. He called it the eternal return. He asked, if you had to live this exact life, every moment, every choice, every mistake, over and over for eternity, would you say yes? Not once, but forever. The question isn't about time, it's about truth. If you keep returning to the same chaos, the same relationships, the same breakdowns, the same emotional storms, maybe it's not just happening to you, maybe you're choosing it. Not consciously, but out of habit, out of rhythm, out of something unspoken in your wiring that says, this is what life feels like. Nietzsche wrote, this life, as you now live it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. He wasn't issuing a threat, he was testing your values. Would you be proud to relive this moment, this version of yourself, forever? And if not, what needs to change? Because repeated chaos isn't always failure. Sometimes it's feedback, the same way you repeat a lesson until it's learned, or revisit pain because it's unresolved. And the longer it goes unchecked, the more natural it feels, until it becomes identity, until it becomes your baseline for what life is. That's the danger of unconscious return. Not that the pain comes back, but that we stop noticing it. Nietzsche's eternal return doesn't offer escape. It demands confrontation. If this moment repeated endlessly, would you call it worthy? If not, what would need to shift? Not just in circumstance, but in you. Because chaos doesn't end just because we want peace. It ends when we build something stronger in its place. Not a wall, not avoidance, but structure, direction, form. The return isn't a curse, it's a mirror, and when we finally see what's repeating, we get the chance to choose differently. So what happens after the mirror shatters? After you finally see the pattern, not as fate, but as choice? Nietzsche believed there was a way forward, not by erasing pain, but by using it. That idea takes shape in one of his boldest visions, the Übermensch. So what now? You've seen the loop, you've felt the pattern, you've watched yourself walk into the same fire, hoping it burns differently this time. Nietzsche didn't stop at recognition. He believed the next step was transformation. He called it the Übermensch, not a perfect person, not a superhero, but someone who invents meaning instead of inheriting it, someone who doesn't just react, but creates. The Übermensch isn't safe. They aren't normal. They walk alone most of the time because they've stopped waiting for the world to give them a path and started shaping one themselves. Nietzsche wrote, man is a rope tied between beast and Übermensch, a rope over an abyss. Most people cling to the rope. They don't want to fall, but the Übermensch walks it. They use the pain, the past, the noise, not to justify collapse, but to build something out of it. They turn suffering into ethics, chaos into craft, trauma into truth. That doesn't mean ignoring what hurt you or pretending it was beautiful. It means refusing to let it be the final word. The Übermensch doesn't avoid chaos. They give it form. They don't wait for the pain to go away. They move inside it and then move through it. Earlier, we talked about how trauma creates loops, how chaos becomes familiar, but Nietzsche would say, familiarity is not fate, it's raw material. The only question is what you do with it. Most people use their suffering to explain why they stayed small. The Übermensch uses it as fuel to outgrow everything that once defined them. That might mean rebuilding your values from scratch. It might mean walking away from identities that earned you sympathy. It might mean giving up stories that were true but are no longer useful. None of this is easy. It's not supposed to be. But Nietzsche didn't write for easy lives. He wrote for people who could no longer sit still in borrowed meaning, people who were done with the loop and ready, finally, to write something new. The Übermensch isn't born through ease or status or enlightenment. They're born through tension, through refusal, through creation. They stand at the edge of the abyss and keep walking, not because they're fearless, but because they've learned to carry the fear and move anyway. That's not perfection, that's power. We talk about wanting peace, but most of us don't really mean it. What we want is to become the kind of person who can stand in the middle of chaos without needing to run, someone who can feel the pressure and still choose their direction, someone who doesn't collapse at the first sign of silence. That's not about suppressing fear. It's about learning what to do with it, because chaos isn't going away. Life doesn't flatten itself just because we want it to be smooth. The question is, what are you going to build out of it? So the next time life goes quiet and you feel the itch to scroll, to stir, to self-destruct, pause and ask yourself, am I escaping stillness, or am I about to begin something I can't name yet? Maybe the tension isn't a warning sign. Maybe it's a signal that the old shape no longer fits, and that it's time, finally, to shed something. Nietzsche once wrote, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die, as well the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions. They cease to be mind." So maybe peace isn't the goal. Maybe it's the space we enter right before change. The question is, what will you do with it? If you enjoyed our video, please drop us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you again in Mantis Library.